I believe we have to start from chapter.
Yes, but no sound is coming.
Text 8. Anyone who gives up prescribed duty. Anyone who gives up prescribed as troublesome of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced such action renunciation. One who is in Krishna consciousness should not give up earning money out of fear that he is performing fruitive activities. If by working one can engage his money in Krishna consciousness, or if by rising early in the morning one can advance his transcendental Krishna consciousness, one should not desist out of fear or because such activities are considered troublesome. Such renunciation is in the mode of passion. The result of passionate work is always miserable. If a person renounces work in that spirit, he never gets the result of renunciation. कार्यमिति एव यत्कर्म नियतं क्रियते अर्जुन संगम त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव satyaga satviko matah. O Arjuna, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Prescribed duties must be performed with this mentality. one should act without attachment for the result. He should be dissociated from the modes of work. A man working in Krishna consciousness in a factory does not associate himself with the work of the factory, nor with the workers of the factory. He simply works for Krishna. And when he gives up the result for Krishna, he is acting transcendentally. Nadoishti akushalam karma kushale nanusachyate tyagi sattva samavishto medhavi chinna samshayah. The intelligent pronouncer, situated in the mode of goodness, neither hateful of inauspicious work nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubts about work. A person in Krishna consciousness or in the mode of goodness does not hate anyone or anything which troubles his body. He does not work in the proper place and at the proper time. He does work in the proper place and the proper time without fearing the troublesome effects of his duty. Such a person situated in transcendence should be understood to be most intelligent and beyond all doubts in his activities. Okay, I think uh, fine. So engagement in duty is a focus. Engagement in duty and renunciation of duty. Renunciation of duty owing to different modes and engagement in duty. Now this is quite interesting because Srila Prabhupada's purport uh, seems to be passing every activity. So Prabhupada is talking about tech state, working in a factory. So one should not give up working in the factory. Quite interesting. Actually, this is the point which we stopped at in our previous class, or which was so the last point which we were discussing, or one of the last points which we were discussing, the previous class. So one should not give up earning money out of fear that he is performing fruitive activities. So if by working, one can engage money in Krishna consciousness, and one should not desist out of fear. Now, this is an interesting point. One important fact which gets established here is that Krishna consciousness means active engagement. Krishna consciousness is realized on the grounds of practical activity. So Krishna consciousness is not theoretical, it is not meditative. But it entails practical action. Therefore, in one sense, so therefore you will see Nishkam Karma Yoga is the operative definition of Bhakti Yoga. So in operation, Bhakti Yoga and Nishkam Karma Yoga are not much different from each other. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with that subtle difference which we had mentioned before. Now, if you try to see here, when we talk about renunciation in the mode of goodness, the first and foremost thing which is being asked from us to renounce or to give up is the idea of deriving pleasure in the activity. So we will say now, okay, if we give up the idea of deriving pleasure from the activity, if we give up that idea of deriving pleasure from the activity, then what will be the motivation for the activity? There comes the point, the motivation for the activity is pleasure of Krishna. And that is why the beginning dimensions of bhakti begin with Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam. So Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam is the beginning presence of bhakti. And these beginning presence of bhakti only start manifesting when that idea for deriving sense gratification is given. So this is interesting because the whole world runs on self-centered motivation. The motivation comes from lust. And the entire material world is running on that motivation. That motivation is coming from lust. It is lust which is driving people crazy. Where is that passion? Where is that aggressiveness? Where is that that resilience, that grit is coming? It's coming from lust. That insatiable, that is coming from lust. And therefore, it is a grand road towards further degradation, further entanglement, and deep, not deep, intense misery. That's all what it is all about. Now, therefore, as soon as it is said, okay, pure self-centeredness, renounce that. Mode of goodness renunciation means renounce the idea of self-gratification. Renounce the idea of self-centeredness. So that's why we say, okay, so what is the first point to renounce? Here the Lord is telling Karmanyavadikaraste, you renounce the idea of fruits. That's the first point. So one is, okay, if I am not getting anything, then why should I do the activity? So as soon as the fruit is taken off, immediately the person falls to inaction. Immediately the person falls to inaction. Therefore, in Karmanyavadikaraste also, the second half of that same, the other half of the same verse speaks about, don't be attached to not doing the duty as well. So, because the moment the fruitive mentality is given up, immediately person becomes inactive. And we think, okay, then why should I act? Then I'll just sit, I'll just take the serve. I'll not do any action. Why should I worry? So immediately the inactivity starts creeping. And that's why inactivity is also strongly addressed. That okay, one extreme is full attachment, other extreme is full detachment. Both are so both are same sides, so the same coin. Both are passion. This is indulgence in passion. This is renunciation in passion. It's not much different from each other. If you are on one side, very easily you will go to the other side. That's the idea. A person very passionate about achievement, he's created an empire. Now there are some tussle, there are fights, people are insulting him, this, that. He says, okay, I give it up everything. I just walk out. So he's not become detached. It's renunciation in the mode of passion. He's same attached. This attachment has to be given up. So rather, inactivity, therefore, is not at all a stabilizing platform. Rather, inactivity is a risky platform, because the more one remains inactive, the more the negative potential is getting stored or increased. And at some point of time, it is going to overpower. And the person will jump, shoot from this end to the other end. That's the point. So that's why Krishna consciousness has to be translated into activities. And now to be able to come to the platform of acting, one needs some motivation, one needs some goal. And that is why there is no question of service without service cannot take place without intake. Krishna consciousness, service cannot take place without intake. That's why what Prabhupada used to say, Prabhupada said, you cannot do deity worship without chanting your rounds nicely, without reading Bhagavatam properly. So there is no question of service without spiritual intake. Prabhupada said that deity will be felt like a galagraha because you are not hearing and chanting. And because you are not hearing and chanting, how the motivation for activity will come? So that activity will be a drag. it will be a very painful drag that I have to drag myself. That's the point. So therefore, whenever we find that the motivation for service to Krishna is not coming up, that means that we need to work on intake. Because it is only the spiritual intake, our sadhana and association, which will actually give us that motivation to act. So Krishna's pleasure is not our default script. So therefore, it has to be borrowed. Anyone can borrow this. It doesn't require, anyone can borrow this. But it requires effort towards that object. That is why, for a sincere practitioner, sadhana and association are very important factors. But sadhana and association are giving one the gear. So once one gets into the gear, one should steer. You know? Sadhana and association are not all in all and full and complete at the end of it. Sometimes some devotees feel that I am doing my sadhana, I am getting 90% in the sadhana card, and I am taking association. Now, so many times I am taking association, and it's all good. It's not all good. When it's good, you can do better than that. Because sadhana and association are giving one the energy. Now, if that energy is invested in service, that the results of the mercy will multiply. Therefore, just sadhana and association, a person may get indigestion. The Krishna consciousness has to be complete. Therefore, you see, the aspect of duty is being raised in the very conclusions of, and the very conclusive chapter as well. Because it is important. One has to be holistic about the entire. One has to be holistic. So, what is to be given up is sense gratification. That I am deriving pleasure, and actually these verses are all geared towards that. So when it comes to duty, we did mention previously also, duty is not about what profession we are in. Duty is not about what kind of job, what kind of branch we land up in. That's not duty. Duty is about duty is about in what way we have taken the responsibility to serve Krishna. And in what way we have the potentiality to serve. Duty is about that. Therefore, duty is about psychophysical fixity. Duty is about commitments which are taken to serve Krishna. That's the duty. That's the duty. And how Varna gets involved there, because that service to Krishna is mixed with the material factors. That duty involves offering of certain material factors. That is where Varna gets involved. That is exactly where Varna gets involved. But it's not about profession. It's about it's not actually about profession. It's about how do we want to serve Krishna, or how are we wanting to serve Krishna. So here in the purport, when Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that if by working one can engage his money in Krishna consciousness, then one should not desist. This does not mean that, okay, that means that one should go to the company factory and earn a lot of money and give that money to Krishna. That is not what is meant at all. Because immediate next example Prabhupada is given that if by waking up early in the morning is conducive to Krishna consciousness, one should wake up early in the morning. So how earning money is one example, and the immediate next example is waking up in Krishna consciousness. So that means that the concept here is different. The concept here is not that because I am in a profession, therefore I have to go in the profession. Maybe some money I can give to Krishna. That is definitely not a bhakti, but that is a lower rung, which can be a transient stage for a person in his evolution towards Krishna consciousness. But Krishna consciousness is more deeper. So here the working is for Krishna. That's why Prabhupada is making the point that a worker in a factory, even he will be working in a factory, he is not identifying with either the factory inmates, the factory employees, nor the work in the factory. He only identifies with Krishna. This means that Krishna consciousness is all about, first of all, giving up the fruitive mentality in terms of results, in terms of inactivity, in terms of the type of activity which one wants to do. Also, that was a differentiating factor between Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So once that is given up, it will be very tough to act. So then the next step is to install the motivation by sadhana and association. Now comes the beautiful point. So now the point comes the point which Prabhupada is actually mentioning. The point is now for the service of Krishna, something is required, one should be happy to take it up. That's the point. So one should be happy to take it up. So for the service of Krishna, something is required, then one should be happy to take it up. Just like you see, now say for so the first and the fourth. Now you may say, okay, without money no service happens. So should the aim be money? Should the aim be service? The aim is service. And for the service, whatever is required, one can try to do that. That's the point. Not the other way around. That okay, I am earning money, and you figure out or somebody figures out how to use it for Krishna service. The other way around is going to be better. That the fixity is on service, and whatever money is required, one can put efforts. Whether that requires distributing books, then one is enthusiastic distributing books. If that requires making incense sticks and selling agarbatti, frankincense, then one can do that. If that requires making a guest house, then one should be happy to do that. Because if that requires opening an IT park and giving on rental, one should be happy to do that. So that means, what? Has one become an entrepreneur? Or should one try to do an entrepreneurship course, become an entrepreneur, go to some ISB? No. It just requires to be dedicated. That okay, whatever is needed for service of Krishna, one is ready to do that. This is the interesting point. So service to Krishna. Now, so this brings out the point that actually in the mode of goodness, renunciation. So mode of goodness renunciation is filled with activity. But the focus is going to be service to Krishna and pleasure of Krishna. And because the focus is service to Krishna and pleasure of Krishna, that activity is not contaminated. That is why Srila Prabhupada said that by counting bags of cement, you are making spiritual advancement. How can by counting bags of cement one can make spiritual advancement? So the devotee is not counting bags of cement, is making a temple of the Lord. on Prabhupada's instructions. Is it? And his mind is obsessed with the instructions of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is given a deadline. I have to finish. No? It's 2 months to go. Prabhupada is coming. I have to finish the temple. Temple inauguration has to take place. Mind is obsessed with that. So that is devotional service. Then that counting of cement bags is devotional service. So this is the interesting point. That always in life, the spiritual factors should take prominence. The service to Krishna should take prominence. And while doing service to Krishna, whatever easily comes along with it, nearby it, one can put efforts on that to get some earnings. And that's it. That's good enough. That is good enough. So you will see with this attitude, whatever is needed will come. There may not be surplus, but what is needed is going to come. Actually. And the entire ISKCON movement is a proof of that. So devotees have not gone too much out of the box to be able to get money for Krishna. And they did not give up their morning program. They did not give up their temple stay for that purpose. They tried a little bit here and there. Okay, they got some machines, made some incense. They constructed some rooms. They went to some donors, asked for funds. They distributed books. They organized some seminars, paid seminars, or wrote some more, some further literatures. So that's all. That's all. So it's very much centered around service to Krishna. Very much centered around service to Krishna. So this gives rise to a beautiful point that you see, the more indirect we go, it is going to be difficult. Pleasure of Krishna is to maintain pleasure of Krishna is going to be difficult. The more direct we are, the easier it is going to be. So the more direct we are, the easier it is going to be. So therefore, material